Okay, so UGRC 150, critical thinking, speeding through the units. Unit 6, deduction versus induction. We've got to know the differences between deduction and induction so we can identify them whenever we find them. But before that, let's understand premises. Premises is your proposition or set of statements which you want us to believe some conclusion of yours or a theory. For instance, Kofi is gay, so when he comes to the party, he will harass the men. What's your reason for saying Kofi will harass the men when he comes to the party? Your reason is Kofi is gay. That's your premises. And your conclusion is he will harass the men when he comes to the party. So that's how premises and conclusions link up. Now, for the deduction, your premises, the truth of your premises guarantees or ensure that your conclusion should be true. This is not the same situation in induction. In induction, the truth of the premises or the premises just gives a likelihood or a probability that your conclusion will be true. It doesn't guarantee it 100% that it should be true. This is the main difference between deduction and induction. So all these things you are going to read, the main difference is what you've pointed out. In deductive reasoning, your premises guarantees, it makes sure that your conclusion should be true. It links up to your conclusion that it should be true. But in inductive reasoning, it gives a good likelihood for it to be true. Scrolling down. What is an argument? So an argument is a set of statements with premises in one conclusion. That is it. Then going down, have difference between particular and general statements that appear in almost every argument. But before that, let's look at reference and attribute class. For this example, Joshua and Kofi are reading in the library. Joshua and Kofi are the people we are talking about. They are the people we are referring to. So they are our reference class. And the attribute class are the attributes of the reference class. What they are doing, what we are saying about them. So are reading in the library. Why are we talking about Joshua and Kofi? They are reading in the library. Reading in the library is the attribute class. But the people we are referring to, Joshua and Kofi, are the reference class. Now, if you come down here, all freshmen are reading the library. So the reference class is all freshmen. The attribute classes are reading in the library. Now, we have particular and general statements. For particular statements, we pick one or some specific subjects and talk about them. But for general statements, as the name implies, we generalize. Okay, so when we see words like or, every, we are trying to generalize for all that category. They are general statements. So Joshua and Kofi are reading in the library. It's a particular statement, whereby the reference class is Joshua and Kofi, and the attribute class is reading in the library. But when it comes to statement 2, all freshmen, it's general. It's a general statement. We are referring to all freshmen. So that's the key point you should note in identifying general and particular statements. So here you can answer all this. Look at number 6. None of the students in this class have registered. General, right? Going down. Oh, here it's not that necessary. We are just speeding through the chapters. Oh, yeah, you're okay with this side. Let's look at an example of a deductive argument. There is a big football match today, and Kwame always watches the matches whenever he can. But this is the only day Kwame is able to study in the library. So Kwame will either be watching the match or he must be in the library. But he is definitely not in the library. His mate saw him leave there 2 hours ago, so you will find him watching the match. This is a good example of a deductive argument. Now, Kwame always watches the matches. Study the generalizations here. Kwame always watches the matches. So always, they are using words like always. Always, Kwame goes to watch. They are not giving probability. They are saying always, he should be there. So the probability is just 1. It will happen. They are not giving some range like 75% or 8%. Always, Kofi watches the match whenever he can. But this is the only day, Kwame is able to study in the library. So Kwame will either be watching the match or he must be in the library. They are using absolute statements. Every day he goes there. Always it does this. That's how to pinpoint the difference between the deductive and inductive. But for inductive, they try to give you some percentage. Don't worry, as you go down, you will understand. Because he's not in the library, you will find him watching the match. That is our conclusion. So we have premises here. Kwame always watches the match, and he will either be watching the match or must be in the library. These are our premises. But you will find him watching the match is our conclusion. That is what they want us to believe. And what were the reasons they give us? Our premises. He watches the match always. When he's not in the library, he's watching the match. Now let's look at an example of an inductive. 75% of football matches played over the last year were attended by Kwame. You notice the 75%. Normally, if he is not in the library when a match is played, then he will watch the match. Today, the library is closed and there's a big chance. So Kwame is probably watching the match. Did you see the probability words they are using? They are not trying to be absolute. 75% normally. Where's the other one? There's a big chance. Probably. They are not trying to be on the safer side, saying he's watching the match, he's not watching the match. That is the main difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. So let's try to read the statement down there. In this argument, we learn that based on his behavior over the last year, there's a 3 out of 4 chance, that's the 75%, that if a big match is being played, Kwame will be watching it. They are not saying he will go to watch, as in deductive. You should note that. They are saying he will probably watch it, but the probability is slightly above average. 75% is a good probability. He tends to be there. If he's not in the library, have you noted that? He tends to be there. But we don't know this has an absolute regularity with no exception. So if the premises are true, then it may not be true that Kwame is watching the match. But in the absence of further information, these premises give us a good reason to believe that the conclusion is true. So inductive reasoning sort of tries to stay on the safer side. So it's usually true. You get it? So in inductive reasonings or arguments, there can never be contradictions. What are contradictions? Contradiction is when you say one thing in a statement and later you say another thing in that same statement that contradicts it. For example, if I ask you, is it raining outside? And you tell me it's either raining or it's not raining. You can never be wrong, because when I go outside, it's either it's raining or it's not raining. Such a statement is a contradiction. Contradictions can be found in deductive arguments, because if I tell you Kofi is gay, right? And later in my conclusion we come to realize that Kofi is not gay, I've contradicted myself. But in inductive reasoning, when you say Kofi might be gay and later in the conclusion you come to say Kofi is not gay, you said Kofi might be gay. You can never contradict yourself. Okay, so a statement that has both contradictory meanings in one sentence is a contradiction. Contradictions cannot occur in inductive argument or reasonings. So we can skip here. You're okay with this? All these examples relate to what we've done. Summary of section. Let's go through the summary. I think 1 or 2. Deductive arguments, when valid, guarantee their conclusions being true if their premises are true. If you do not accept the conclusion of a valid pattern of reasoning deductively, then you'll be contradicting yourself. You're okay with all that. Now, section 2. Some simple deductive argument